Welcome to the Startup Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Trutter. After over 800 plus successful dental startups, I'm here to share everything I know about starting a profitable and purposeful dental practice with you. Welcome back to the Startup Dentist Podcast. It is great to be here again today with all of you striving for practice ownership. So associates ready to take that leap into ownership. Those exploring ownership, super excited. Today's topic is one of the most overused phrases in dentistry and one of the most misunderstood, and that is patient-centered care. Patient-centered care. Every practice says it. Very few actually build it intentionally from the beginning. So if you're starting a practice, this is your window, your one shot to design the foundation, the culture that patients feel the moment they walk into your future practice. It's not something that you fix later. It's not something that you wait and say, well, once the door's open, then we're going to define what patient-centric care is. We're going to define, what that patient experience is, because this is something that you build from day one, actually, even before the door's open. So let's break that down and see how you actually do it. So grab that notepad and let's make this dream practice of yours a living and breathing reality. Patient-centric care. It's not a slogan, folks. It's an actual system. It's very intentional. One of the things that we always talk about with clients here at Ideal Practices is even before the doors open, one of the practices that we do and one of the best practices to help develop this is we actually have each one of our clients say, develop what is the best possible review that you could ever have from a patient? And there's a lot of depth into that. There's a lot of different elements that we want to have that are in there. There's very specific things that we look for in that, because it's not just about getting reviews. It's what they understand is from that exercise. It's like, wait a minute, you're wanting me to define my culture inside my practice. You want this to help me even attract the right team members. And it's like, yes, that's what this is about. It's about being intentional. It's about beginning with the end in mind, about when a patient comes in your practice, what is that experience that's in there? So that's why I say patient-centric. It's not a slogan, folks. It's not about being nice or friendly. I'm doing my bunny air quotes here. It's about designing every single aspect of your practice, every system, every even future decisions in interaction around the patient experience. Because what happens a lot of times is, I think with startups, and having worked with nearly 1,000, probably now over 1,000 startups, there's always I always talk about this, there's that focus on okay, I know the big things I need to have: construction, equipment, marketing or branding, and maybe clinical elements. And then there's this part that most people don't talk about. And this is where we extract this. And we actually talk about this first in our 13-stage process. When we start talking about the development of the vision of a practice, it's not about the brand. It's not about the equipment. It's about this essential foundational DNA-based element, which is, how are we going to define what patients say about your practice? What is that experience that you want every patient to leave with? Because if you don't define it, what's going to happen is you're going to open up and somebody else is going to define it for you, whether that's the patients or whether that's the team that's not trained properly. They don't understand what your vision of the practice. They don't understand what that patient experience is. And they're not going to be intentional because you're not focused on it. We start here because this lays the foundation for your practice. This is where you start with building a startup practice. It's not about real estate. It's not about a loan. Yeah. Those are tangible elements of getting a startup practice going. But that's where most startups fail and they miss the mark, is that they rush out to say, okay, I found a real estate person. I've got a bank. Let's go find space and I'm going to go build a practice. And then all along, they're so focused on, because there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of elements of a startup. There's a lot of moving parts. You've got a lease. You've got a floor plan. You've got built systems. You've got branding. You've got marketing. You've got equipment and construction. You've got all these things kind of swirling around. And then the foundational element that actually keeps patients coming back to your practice or helps you attract patients or even attract the right team members is literally sitting in front of you. And you spend 5 minutes on that, and you spend hours picking out colors for your chairs. No one's coming back, folks, because, wow, the flooring in that office is just beautiful. Nobody's coming back for that. No one's coming back simply because you have comfortable chairs. In some cases, I'll tell you this, they're not coming back because you have the best margins. You know what? Most patients don't even know what margins are. They don't even understand like the clinical side. You could be a great clinician. This is where so many people get focused on, like, I want to make sure that I deliver great dentistry and the dentistry lasts forever. Okay, that's great. That's a great concept. I understand that. But patients don't just come back because they had great dentistry. I think about restaurants in that way. You ever been to a great restaurant and go, the food was good, but man, the atmosphere was awesome? Yeah, I still go back mostly because of the food. But there's still that experience. And I think it's even more important when it comes to dentistry because I think most dentists find themselves capable from a clinical perspective because obviously you went through dental school. I have clients all the time in vision calls go, hey, listen, I may not be the most gifted clinician, but I know the experience that I have and what I've had as an associate, what I've developed and the reviews that I get from patients, even in my associate position, that I want to recreate that experience with my own autonomy. This is what you get to do, folks, when it comes to building your own practice. But if you're not intentional about talking about culture and developing culture from day one, it won't actually happen and you won't have the culture that you want. We have to spend time. And this is one of the first things we got to spend time on. So it's not what you have, it's what they experience. So ask yourself a few questions. When coming into your practice, what do you want patients to feel in the first couple of minutes? Where could they feel confused? Where do they feel anxious, within your practice? Where do they feel valued? If you don't design for these moments, culture will form, like I said, by default, and usually not in your favor. Because if you don't think about these certain elements, that's what's going to happen. It's just going to happen, and it won't happen in a way that aligns with you. I always say, scripts are great, but we need to talk about what are the values. I think a lot of times scripts help mask certain things. Yes, there is scripting that needs to be done. And we talk about phone scripts. We talk about presenting treatment and things like that. In a lot of cases, that approach can break pretty quickly. What I would do think about is what are some of the core values that guide behavior? Clarity over complexity. Let's talk about empathy, having ownership of that patient experience where every team member takes ownership, respect for the patient's time. This is a big thing. So these are some examples. What I'm saying is these are some examples of my core values of your practice that are in there. And then you need to build the behavior around the values. For example, if it's respect of time, don't run 30 minutes over and act like it's normal. Good. So don't run 30 minutes behind and go, this is normal. Communicate delays proactively and design scheduling that actually works. And this is part of that process of do you need extra time? I was talking with a client the other day. His name is Dr. Tyler. I know he does listen. So, hey, Dr. Tyler, if you're listening out there, he was talking about in his current environment, and maybe some of you have had this, in his current associate position right now, he talks about I don't have time to even connect with my patient. It's he goes, I want to be able to have a connection point where it's I don't have 5 minutes to ask how are you? Feel like a McDentist. It's a transaction. He goes, yeah. He's man, it feels like transaction. And he felt that because it's in this DSO environment, it's just it's turn and burn. There's no time for patience. And it reflects, he says, in, inside of the practice. And this is not just the patient experience, but also the culture of the team as well. And he recognizes this and he goes, that's not what I want inside of my practice. And I said, great, we're going to define that now. Even this scenario where it's time for him, he's I want some extra time in between patients. I want to be able to chat with them. I want to be able to ask them questions. I want to be able to build a relationship. I want them to leave with a great experience. Folks, that's how we do that. Taking a little extra time with patients while they're sitting there builds trust. That's what you're also building. Listen, all of you can go out and do a crown. Most of you, I'm sure you can, unless you're still in dental school, you haven't cut a crown yet. But again, assuming you're listening, you're a dentist already, you all do a crown. But I think what happens in that share and that connection that builds trust and empathy, where they don't feel like they're rushed through a process, that they're just pushed through, because that's not a great experience from a patient perspective. You need to be able to be intentional from day one. And that's why we start here. Hiring. Do you understand that developing the culture for your practice and defining it early, it's not just about, in defining the patient experience, more importantly, it's not just about the patient, but about your team. Hiring, it's hard in some areas, in some cases. When it comes to hiring, you want to be able to attract the right people that have this same mindset. So when I talk about building the best possible review that you can think of, I would be sharing that with potential people that you may want to hire. Why? Because you're trying to, things can be taught. You can teach systems, you can teach how the scripts, but you can't teach a mindset. You can't teach a culture builder. And I think what you'll find is there might be assistants or hygienists or front desk people working for other practices. And when you share something like, this is what I want the experience to be, this is all what I want our patients to feel, you're going to attract people that are attracted to that, because maybe they're working in an environment right now where they feel like a number and they don't get the chance to actually connect with patients. Just like Dr. Tyler talked about. He, as a dentist, doesn't have a chance to talk to patients and make a connection in his environment. So you think the rest of the team has that chance? Folks, there are people out there that do want to have that. They feel like they want to be a part of something that is better, that they've been an assistant, they've been a front desk person for decades, they've been things like that. So that doesn't mean that's hiring is a different hiring strategies. I could talk about, for hours and things like that. So don't hire based upon experience or systems, all those things can be taught. Hire based upon the mindset. This culture element and this sharing what you want to have with that first hire or that first couple of hires about, hey, this is the patient experience I want to have. Can you help me get this? That's how you build a team too that wants to be a part of this journey with you. And listen, folks, I would be looking for people that communicate naturally with empathy. They take ownership without being asked. They care about people, not just the tasks of this. Because here's the real thing is that patients don't separate you from your team. You are your team. You are your practice. Everybody is melded together. So one misaligned hire can create a patient experience that you don't want. And I'll tell you this, it's like the old saying, fire fast, hire slow. Yeah, those who you probably hire from day one, the ones that don't work typically just don't fit because of the culture. So I would be looking at that lens of culture, and sharing this vision of what you want for your patients is an important part of the hiring process, because you want to find people that are aligned with this. I've had clients over the years when they talk about this vision, their best possible review element, and we actually have them share this with their team. It becomes it almost feels like a mission statement, but on steroids. And we've had team members that have talked about this. They've said things like, I'm working here because of this, because I want to be a part of this mission. They're here because they want to build this kind of patient-centric care. Folks, that has happened time and time again, because the team members are attracted not only to you, but they recognize in you, this doctor gets it. This doctor wants to build something that is for the practice. And the thing is, I think a lot of people talk about this. I think most dentists do talk about this. The problem is they talk about it, but they don't actually implement it. Yeah, we're going to have great things. We're going to do great things for this. Your decisions on a daily basis inside of your practice need to align with this. The decisions of the patients, your team, what you use inside the practice or systems, and even elements of the environment of your practice need to be around this experience so that when they leave, it is a consistent element and it's an alignment from day one. If you don't get this right, you just have a practice that opens and you have a patient experience that's just going to be ho-hum because you weren't intentional about making true connections. Cool? I would say also about the patient. Let's talk about the journey of the patient, of coming to your practice. Things like, how easy was it for them to book? How did they answer the phone? During the visit, when they came to your practice, how were they greeted? Were they given certain elements? Were there some comfort elements that they were offered? During the visit, did they feel rushed? Does your practice feel overwhelming, in terms of the environment? Are the transitions from team members smooth or chaotic? I think this is an important part, is that be intentional also about that each team member, that handoff. Think about, like, put yourself in the position of a patient that came into your practice and go, okay, I found you online. It was easy to book. The person on the phone was really friendly. They were very accommodating. They explained everything. It just set the tone. When I stepped into the practice, I was greeted with smiles. Hey, how are you? Greeted me by name. I wasn't just shoved a bunch of paperwork and go sit in a corner and fill out stuff. Like, is there stuff that they could do before from a time perspective, where they offered coffee or things like that, if that's important to you? It's really making sure, like, and then also, as they went through the practice, how was that transition, from the assistant to the hygienist? What does that communication feel like? How do they feel within the practice? Do people can feel tension, by the way, folks, too? So, like, do they feel tension amongst team members? We know what that feels like, folks. Is those elements that's there, after the visit, does the patient know what to do? Was there a great transition afterwards? Did they understand, like, okay, next you're going to do this and everything? So kind of imagine yourself as if you were a patient coming to your practice. What does that experience feel like from start to finish as they enter the practice, during the visit, after the treatment? What's the follow-up protocol? Was there elements afterwards? Imagine yourself and then define that. When you define that, then now what you're building is a system, not a slogan, around a patient experience. And every patient needs to be stamped out that way. Communication is the culture. If you want a patient-centric experience, you also need patient-centric communication. And that means no, like, jargon-heavy explanations, no, like, rushed conversations, and certainly make sure that there's no assumptions that the patient just understands. Be thorough in the explanations. Patients don't judge your clinical skill directly, but they judge how clearly and effectively and confidently you communicate it. If you're confident in what you deliver, if they understand this comes from a place of trust that you're building, instead of saying, this is what you need, try something like, here's what I'm seeing, here's why it matters, and here are your options. That's a much different experience. Now the patient's like, okay, this doctor's not just trying to sell me on dentistry and push me through, because maybe, think about this, folks, maybe that patient's been to other practices and they've had that kind of experience. I just need this, I just need that. Or then they come to you, if they hear the same thing, then they just feel like, oh, this is just another dentist trying to sell me on dentistry. What if you're that dentist that actually provides for them clarity, and that you deliberately, confidently to say, here is why you need to say, this is, I talked about this even in our own company here. I talked about this when I was in financing. It's like, giving an answer sometimes doesn't really give the understanding to the end user or the patient or the client. But when you give the why behind it, then it's like, oh, okay. But that why is because for their own good. That's the main thing, is that the why can't just be, well, why? Because that's what your insurance will provide. Wrong answer. The why needs to be, well, over time, this could break down. Over time, this is what could happen. And these are some of the challenges you've already experienced. Now the patient goes, wow, this doctor, I feel more confident in them. I feel like they are not just selling me dentistry. They're actually explaining things to me, and they're giving me a better understanding, and they give me options to understand, like, how can I accomplish what I want to accomplish? Folks, that's a thumbs up. That's how you build a patient-centric practice and experience time and time again. You do that once, that patient tells their friends. Keep doing it. Now it's like you are building trust in your community. Culture. So hopefully that helps you give you some insight there, like the communication element. So let's talk about what you can tolerate when it comes to culture. You can define values all day, but what you allow is what sticks. If a team member rushes patients or speaks dismissively or cuts corners on communication and nothing happens, that defines your culture. And I understand it's a startup and it's like you found somebody, they're a body, they're working. But folks, you have to address these issues early. You have to reinforce what is right and what right looks like, and celebrate when there's patient-centered behavior, because culture isn't built in team meetings. It's built in what gets reinforced on a daily basis. So this is not just a one-time thing like, hey, here we go, here's how we do things. It's like every single day it's reinforced. And if you have a team member that can't do it and he consistently can't do it, you need to get rid of them. And if that means a little bit of pain in order to get the right people, that is absolutely a part of this journey. Because we've seen it happen time and time again. You hire a couple people. I don't know what the record is, but we've had, within a week of first hires, we've had clients had to fire people. Why? They interview well, they seem like they're going to be great. And then things like, the excuses, we've all probably heard these. My kid was sick, or hey, there was a delay with this. And it's like, okay, a couple of those things can happen. But if it's consistent, that's there, or they candidly don't communicate well, or they're a disruption to your team, or just they're toxic, you've got to get rid of those folks. And the thing is, they look great on paper and they may interview great and they can be toxic within a week, really. And if they're not in alignment with what you want, even after consistent reinforcement on a daily basis, you got to get rid of them. Because again, back to the patient doesn't separate you from this team member. They associate your practice with that particular team member. And if you got one team member that's not doing what needs to be done, they don't have the right behavior, that person can really be a burden for your practice, not just from the patient perspective, but but inside of the practice. With that toxicity, it's like a cancer. It just builds throughout the practice. And if one team member says, why is she or he allowed to do that when we have a different standard? Again, you hold a standard, that's the standard you live up to. And if they don't live up to that standard, that you have to make some very, very tough choices. So what's the long-term payoff for this? A patient-centric practice just doesn't feel good. It drives higher case acceptance, stronger patient connections and loyalty, more referrals, and less friction. I think about some of our clients. Dr. Amanda comes to mind. Dr. Lindsay I've talked about before. So many practice owners that's like they have this great team. Dr. Bar's up in Georgia. His name's Dr. Chin. Dr. Chin, if you're listening, hey, how you doing? Dr. Chin, actually, he was at our most recent course, our Startup Practice Blueprint course. And one of the things that he's most proud of from a success perspective is he has this team that now it's like everything works well. At the beginning, it was like, man, he went through a couple team members because couldn't find the right people. And he demands a lot of his team. He's like, hey, I demand a lot. But it's not just it's not demanding working harder. It's the demand of daily, this is what we do to create this kind of experience. And he was very intentional about that. He put a lot of time and effort into making sure that every patient that comes through has this kind of experience. And he doesn't have an experience that's it's not spa or anything like that. It's a very consistent messaging. It's very intentional about how that patient feels coming into the practice, throughout the visit, after, what they feel from the team, and everything that's in there. And again, it came back to intentionality, folks, because Dr. Chin was very intentional about building this practice, very intentional about this. And that's the foundation that we help build with him. Is that goes back to that first discussion. It wasn't about after the door's open, it says, hey, what do you think, how do you want to do this? Our first discussion with each one of our clients, and Dr. Chin included, was about this. This is a first time discussion. Once you, as a client, it's these are the things we start to define. And then we get into the tangible elements, demographics, equipment, and all those different elements. Yeah. I always say, yeah. We'll get there. This is more important, because without this, guess what, folks? You have a practice that just has chairs, that doesn't have purpose at that point. And then actually, not only will you not have purpose, you only have profits, because the profits lie into the systems that are there and the daily operations that are there. The profitability also comes from that higher case acceptance. So if you don't have the right culture, you don't have the right case acceptance, if you don't have the right elements of like how you present treatment to a patient, if you don't have that empathy and that right communication, you don't have patient loyalty, you don't have the referrals. So really be intentional about what is that experience on a daily basis with each patient that comes through the door, and address it early on if it's not being done correctly. Most importantly, I would say this is that once you have this, then like some of the doctors I've mentioned, you have a practice that you'll love to come into on a daily basis, because you're not just producing dentistry at this point, you're building trust and relationships in your community. And that's what I always find so many of you are going towards, is like, the dentistry. And I'll say this, like, if you can build this, the profitability comes. I think everyone's trying to figure out, like, I think profitability, a lot of times people start thinking about like insurance elements or, more patients through the door and all these different elements. In some cases, the profitability lies with like being very intentional about what that patient experience is, because as you continue to build that patient experience, you will get more referrals. And guess what? Referrals and higher case acceptance, those are byproducts that actually don't cost you more money. It actually gets you more profitability. So that's why we need to be very intentional. If you're thinking about starting a practice, don't wait to figure out the culture later. Later becomes never. Later becomes too late, and your door's open without intentionality. So design it now, hire for it, train for it, and protect it. Because the practices that win long-term aren't just clinically strong. They're built around people intentionally from day one. Thanks for listening, folks. Check out any show notes for any links and resources that we spoke about today. If you want to learn more about some of the doctors I've talked about and how to build a patient-centric practice, go to idealpractices.com and connect with a couple of our advisors for what we call a clarity call. You want to learn more about, like, if you're an associate dentist, you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I know what I want to have in my practice, I just don't know how to get there. Book some time with us. You will find it extremely valuable. It'll be an investment of time that will be well spent for us to understand what you're trying to accomplish, because these are our greatest success stories that we have, that I've shared many times over here at the podcast and everywhere else in my book, Startup Dentist book. It wasn't about just profitability in the fastest growing startups. It was about being very intentional about building something very specific and building a patient-centric practice that over time just became very successful. And I have some of the happiest practice owners out there. So I'll see you next time. As we wrap up this episode, take a moment to picture yourself a year from now. Are you still in your associateship? Or are you rocking it at your own dental practice, creating beautiful smiles and making a real difference? If that's the dream, it's time to chase it. Before we split, make sure to hit subscribe, drop a review, and give us your rating. It helps us keep bringing you the good stuff that you're into. Until we meet again, keep taking that next step towards your future practice. Here's to investing in your dreams and making them a reality.